Hey guys, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, and today I thought we'd take a look at the Pathfinder Knife Shop's Wildcat. Let's look at some of the specs. So the Wildcat is made out of 1/8 of an inch thick 1095 high carbon steel, and the heat treat, just like my other PKS knives, are spot on. We have a 90-degree spine. We have a 4.5 inch blade. It's 9 1/4 in overall length. Scandinavian ground. Comes in at 6.1 ounces. Has walnut scales. And I chose to go with the basic bushcraft sheath. Nothing fancy, just a good high quality leather sheath. Good construction, nice fit and finish. As for the knife itself, the scales of walnut, a very nice finish and all of that. You can't feel any difference where the wood meets up with any of the steel, the pins or the lanyard hole. Really nice on the bottom side of the knife where your fingers come in and grip into the knife here. Makes it a very comfortable knife to use. I do have just a little bit, 1/4 of an inch right here of raised up metal that you can feel across the top of the scales here. Jim with Pathfinder Knife Shop noticed that, and he said to send that back, they'd fix it or send me a brand new knife, but it does not affect the performance of this knife in my hand at all. So I chose to keep this knife. Like I said, it's very, very minor that you can feel anything there at all, and I just don't think it's a big deal. But it's the first knife that I've seen of theirs that there was any contour or grip anywhere on the blank in the scales. But like I said, very minor and something that doesn't bother me at all. So a 90-degree spine is important to me, especially out in the eastern woodlands, for a couple of different reasons. Number one, anytime that I can use it to scrape material and save my cutting edge, that's a conservation of my resources, and I like to do that. Fat wood is very prevalent in my area, and we use it a lot as our go-to fire starting. So being able to process that down and make those fine fuzzies is pretty important to me. And here we have an example of doing just that. Now another thing that, other than just scraping woods, that I like is if you happen to lose your striker or your scraper for your fire steel, I like to be able to use the back of my knife. And I don't want to have to waste a lot of time with multiple strikes. So a good sharp 90-degree spine that will peel that material off of that ferro rod and start me a fire without wasting a lot of my ferro rod with multiple strikes is also important. Now, if the heat treat is right on this blade, and I'm sure it is from the testing that I've done, I've been using this knife since July, we should be able to use this also as our flint and steel. So let's set up and try that. Okay, so we'll get our char tin out here and get us a rock. Tear us off a little piece of this char. Fold that over. Place on the rock. And just in the event that I was to lose my steel, or if I was out and I could make char and find me a good hard rock, I want to be able to use my knife to start fire. This is a good test of the heat treat. There it is. Let's get up here so you can see it. So, good heat treat, and now we know we can start fire with our knife. Now, I don't normally baton my camp knives, but it is a good test of a knife edge. And we've got a really good piece of pine here to work our way through. And the real test is not if this knife will pass through this piece of hard pine. Even though it's important to know that even your camp knife, if it's the one that you're going to have strapped on your side, it's capable of getting down to the inner, more dry material. But what's also important is that after you have batoned and worked that knife, can you come back in that same place, making sure that that edge has not rolled and there's no chipping, and that you can then process down that inner wood that would be dry and do some real fine carving and get into some of that really small, highly combustible material that you can work down, and that edge has held up to that test. And that's a good test of some edge retention, because the knife that you have on your side may be the one that you need to count on in an emergency. So a little bit of a backstory on this knife is I was at the Pathfinder gathering this past July, and Jamie from Self-Reliance Outfitters came to me and he said, "Hey man, I got a knife you really ought to try. I think it's going to make a really good camp knife." And he took the Wildcat right off of his belt and gave it to me, and I used it that weekend, and it was a great camp knife. And you know my story here. If you can do all of the tasks that you need to do with your survival knife, and yet you can still process down your bacon, make some nice thin slices, then you've got a good survival knife. But you also need to be able to have a good camp knife, that if you happen to get caught out and that was the only knife that you had on your side, you need to make sure that it can do some basic woodscrafts also. And this knife has done that superbly. So let's talk just a little bit about where I see this knife really shining. So where do I see this knife really fitting in? It's just like Jamie suspected. It's as a good quality camp knife. With this downswept tip, it works really well processing game, getting up underneath that hide. With the long sweeping radius here in the front that lifts that hide and opens it up like a zipper, the long flat for getting in there and doing those cuts that you need when you're processing up your game, work very well. And for just everyday tasks, as far as cutting up fruits and vegetables around camp to set up that meal, it just handled itself very well. And knowing that even though it's in 1/8 of an inch, it's doing everything that I need it to do as a good quality backup knife. From being able to process my wood, starting my fire, all of the tasks that I need a knife to do, if that knife is on my hip and that's the one that I get caught out in the woods with. Now I'm going to leave a couple of shots here at the end of this video of this knife in action. I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed using this knife and bringing this video to you. Until next time, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. God bless.